if you've been paying attention and you've picked up everything that's been said in this video thus far, you're well on your way to becoming a very good ground rigger. So now, what we were talking about earlier, what we've done, we pointed out the introductory. We also pointed out rig points as far as dead hangs and bridles and identifying the components and what have you. Now what we're about to go into now, we're going to do the actual billing of these rig points. Now when you start billing these rig points, you can have upriggers up in the air. You may have upriggers up in the air already, but whether you have upriggers up in the air or not, most of your local lead riggers and your tow riggers, they're going to tell you the moment you touch this steel or start actually billing rig points, they're going to tell you to get your hard hat. They're going to tell you to get your hard hat because of the fact that when you send rig points up top to your top riggers, to your up riggers, when they're trying to secure that point, they're going to have a loose shackle and they're going to have a loose shackle pin in their hands because they have to disassemble one of those shackles to make certain that they can secure that rig point when you send it up to them. And everybody is human and everybody makes mistakes. So if someone drops something, they're not going to drop it deliberately, but nonetheless, that's why it's imperative that you keep your hard hat on. So at this time, before I start building any rig points, I'm going to put on my hard hat. As you can see, that's the reason why we designed these belts the way we did, because if you're out in the middle of the floor and you're building a rig point and your local rigger tell you to go put your hard hat on, depending on where you are in that venue, if it's a very large venue, that's a long ways you got to walk back to get your hard hat. So that's why we designed these belts this way, where you can just attach your hard hat on the back of your belt. Now I'm going to take my hat off and I'm going to put it in these very large pockets that I have, and I'm going to put on my hard hat and secure it around my chin, so when I start looking up as I send a rig point up, it won't fall off my head. Now, once we do this, what I'm going to do now, we're going to start off with the most simplest rig point there is, a 5 basket. You'll see points written on the floor like this. These rig points, you may just see a 5 on the floor with a B next to it. That stands for a 5 basket. Some of them will put a 5 on the floor, put a hash mark between it, put a slash between it, and put a B next to it. Either way, you have a 5 here, regardless of what you see here. This shows, it represents this is a stinger, a leg, but you notice what's written next to it. What's written next to it is a 0. So if you see a 0 next to it with a slash between it, that means that's a 0. So what that means, excuse me, that nothing is hanging below this 5 basket. Now I'm going to show you how to put this 5 basket together. First of all, you want to be careful on how you uncoil your steel. Not unroll or unravel, how you uncoil your steel. These are the terminology that we use in the rigging industry. So when you say how I uncoil my steel, people know that you have at least some type of experience being in this business. So you uncoil your steel, you want to be careful because this steel will bounce all over the place sometime, and it'll bounce back, hit you in the face, might knock one of your teeth out. It might hit you on your shin, depending on the length of steel that you're working with. And of course, I'm not wearing any knee pads today because I have a sciatic nerve problem, and it's been kind of hurting me, so I can't have any type of pressure such as that going around the back of my leg. But most of the time, I wear knee pads. But if you can find a pair of knee pads out there that's comfortable for you, I would recommend that you get yourself some knee pads, because sometimes you may have to kneel down on a concrete floor or what have you, and you want to try to protect your knees. Now, just as I stated, you uncoil your steel like so, and you get your shackles. When you take your shackles apart, these are 5/8 shackles that we're working with, and we're working with 3/8 steel. 3/8 steel. Now, this is how you insert your shackles into the steel. Whether you're left-handed or right-handed, doesn't matter, and doesn't make no difference which end of the steel that you put it in. It's the same way on both ends. You insert your steel like so. Now, when you insert that shackle into that steel, what you need to do then is figure out which side of that shackle that you're going to put your auxiliary shackle on. It always go on the side that's threaded. The shackle that you inserted through the steel going to have a threaded side on one side of that shackle that you took the pin out of. When you insert it through the steel and you have the threaded side of that shackle, your auxiliary shackle goes on that side. What you do next, you reinsert your pin, secure it, snug it back in place, and then you check that auxiliary shackle. You check it to make certain that shackle is not frozen, it's not bound up. Because why? Because your upriggers do not have tools. So when you send this point up to them, if this shackle is frozen, that means that they cannot get this shackle, they cannot break this shackle to secure the rig point that you're sending up to them. That means they're gonna have to drop this point back in. So you're the ground rigger, it's your responsibility to make certain that that shackle is free, is working properly. So when you send it up to that uprigger, he can disassemble it and secure this point when he gets it up there to him. So all you gotta do is back it off to make sure it's loose, and then just snug it back in place. Snug it back in place. Now what you can do now, on the other end, you can take yourself a piece of burlap. What this burlap does, this burlap is gonna wrap around the beam up top for where that uprigger is gonna secure this rig point. Those beams up top have sharp edges. So the sharp edges on that beam up top, what happens when you take this steel and wrap it around the top of that beam, you throw it over the top of that beam, which we're going to show you exactly how that's done later on in this video. But when you take this and wrap it around the top of that beam, those sharp edges can be right against this steel. So when you apply weight to it, when you send that motor, when you send that chain up, and they apply the weight to the end of that motor, that's going to be a lot of weight on this steel. And chances are, sharp as those beam edges are, it can cut this steel, it can damage this steel, and in that case, that's a safety hazard, and that's too dangerous, and who knows, depending on whether this steel is weak or not, accidents will happen, and you don't want nothing like that to take place. So you always send it up with your burlap, because this burlap, the uprigger going to take it and he's going to wrap it around that beam up top, and once he secures this rig point, he's going to pick this rig point up and he's going to set it over the top of that burlap. And that's what's going to keep this point in place, for one, where it won't slide back and forth, but also at the same time, it's going to give it a little padding to where it's not going to damage this steel as well. Now with these shackles that I just put on here, with the shackles, this is your auxiliary shackle, this is your main shackle, this is where your hook will go in from your chain motor chain. We'll talk about that when we get down to putting these motors together. We'll talk about that when we get ready to start sending rig points up. But what we're going to do here, we have a few of these dead hangs kind of similar to one another. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this steel that we have and we're going to move down this line and we're going to put these points together according to what's written on the floor. So this was your 5 basket. What we can do now, we're going to move over here to your 5 basket. You see a 5 basket up top, and you got a 15 leg. We can show you how this is done. You already got your burlap that's in your 5 basket, because that's what this was, a 5 basket. And what you have right here, that's a 5 basket. So you already got your burlap in your 5 basket, and you already got your basket. But what's going to take place here now? What's going to take place now, you're going to put your 15 leg on it. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this pin out of this 5 basket. Take this pin out of this 5 basket. We're going to lay this 5 basket down. Leave the pin here. I'm going to pick up this 10 leg. Now you might be saying, why you didn't pick up the 5 leg versus picking up the 10 leg? Well, I pick up your 10 leg because this is in a straight line. This is a stinger, leg, or whatever you want to call it. It's a dead hang. So what you're going to do, you can take this 10, and you're going to make certain that you got your 5 basket together, making sure that your auxiliary shackle's in the right place on the threaded side. It's going to be on the threaded side. You want it on that smooth side, so on the threaded side, because I'm going to show you what takes place here. If this pin was in here like so, if I had this pin in here, and this shackle was on this other side, which I'm going to just demonstrate for you. If I had this shackle on this side, not the threaded side, but on this side, the side that the pin thumb is on, you see what happens? Even with this pin screwed all the way in, this thumb here on this pin would get in the way, and the uprigger wouldn't be able to make the point. He wouldn't be able to secure the point. So that's why it's always imperative, it's always important that you make certain, that you make very sure that you put the auxiliary shackle on the right side, or on the right side of the main shackle before sending up the point. So what we're gonna do, once again, here's your shackle. It goes through your steel. You take your auxiliary shackle, the thread is on this shackle. That's the side that auxiliary shackle goes on. Now you take your 10 leg, rather. This can be any size stinger, but right now we're working with a 15 leg. So you got this 10 leg on here, and then you got your 5 leg. Now we'll take this 5 leg and put it on the bottom. You put your 5 leg on the bottom because if you have to drop this point in and take off 5 feet, you don't want to drop it in 15 feet to take off 5 feet. You drop it in until it can reach the 5-foot leg, take the shackle off, put the hook back in it, send it back up. Now, that is your 15 leg and your 5 basket. Now what I want to do, from the way I showed you how it's put together, I did it the way that I can do it, and I did it this way because I'm more experienced than you beginners out here. But I want to show you how you can do it where you will never make a mistake because you're not experienced enough yet. You are a beginner, and I want to make certain that you do this right at all time, the first time, every time. So this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to do this since I have a stinger here, since I have a leg here. I'm going to do it with this steel right here. What we're going to do, I'm going to show you when you got a basket, when you got more than just a basket, when you got a dead hang, or when you got a bridle with a stinger, or just a bridle itself, I'm going to show you how I recommend you do it until you get really good at building these points. How I recommend you really do it. Say you walk up to this point. You walk up to this point and this got a 15 leg on it. The first thing you should do after uncoiling all your steel, first of all, you want to make sure you got all your components. You make sure all the components are here to build this point. A point is not completely done not until you have your burlap. So make certain when you pull whatever it is to build that point with, you always got your burlap there as well. The first thing you want to do, since this is a 15 leg, you want to uncoil your 5 leg, which is already done. The next thing you want to do, you want to uncoil your 10 leg, which is already done. Now what you want to do is take your shackle. You want to stand downstage of the point that you're building. The reason why you want to stand downstage of the point that you're building, because you want to always keep weight. You want to keep pressure on that pin. The reason why you want to keep pressure on the pin, because keeping pressure on the pin gives it a less chance of that pin spinning itself out as the upriggers pull that point up. Because when the upriggers are pulling the point up, sometimes it dances from side to side like so. And when it's dancing like that, it'll have a tendency to roll back and forth, and it may spin that pin out. If the pin is up this way, when you spin that pin out because there's no weight on the pin. Because the rigger up top, the way he's pulling it, he's slashing that pin back and forth. But if it's turned the opposite way, where the pin is facing down, that way the pin will always have weight on it at all time because he's pulling the weight from bottom up. So what you want to do, you want to take your pin, you're going to pick up your 10, and you're going to place your shackle in it this way. That way it's coming facing you. When it's facing you, then you'll pick up your 5 leg and put the 5 leg. Now this is a dead hang, or it can be a stinger on a bridle, it can be either way. But once you have done that, as you're building this point, if there's no motor for you to hook this stinger in or hook this leg in as you build it, what you want to do, you want to coil this steel. You want to coil this steel in a nice, neat fashion as you can. But what you also want to do, you want to leave enough of this leg hanging out. And sometimes your steel won't cooperate with you. So you just have to manage you just have to try to deal with the steel as best you can. Sometimes you have some nice steel that'll coil properly. Sometimes you got steel that's just not going to work. You just have to work with it as best you can. But for whatever you do, you always want to leave at least about 2 to 3 feet of the steel sticking out. You want to leave at least 2 or 3 feet of the steel hanging out like that. So when you do get that motor that comes in place, you don't have to worry about finding the end of that stinger to hook that motor into, to hook that hook into without having a knot in that steel. Because when the steel goes up, and if it's been drug under all the rest of this steel that you have on the floor, when it goes up, it may have a knot in it. So that's why you want to always keep about 2 or 3 feet out when you're calling it up like that until the motor gets there and hook in. Now, if the motor's already there, the first thing you want to do, if the motor's already there, the first thing you want to do, you want to go ahead and hook into it to begin with. That way you don't have to worry about that. Now we'll go up here once again, and we're going to put this basket back together for you. With your auxiliary shackle already in place. And then you go ahead and secure your burlap in place. Now that's a complete rig point build. I don't care how much steel you put together. I don't care what you've done. If you hadn't placed that burlap in the end of that bridle or in the end of that dead hang, that's not a complete rig point build. You gotta have the burlap plate in the proper place. Now, what we're gonna do, we're gonna move over and we're gonna build a 15 split. Now the difference between a 15 split and a 15 leg, now as you notice, you got a 15 leg down here, you got a 15 split up here. The difference between this 15 is written down here is actually a leg, it's a stinger, it's in line, it's a dead hang. You got a 5 basket up top. This 15 over here, when you see it written over the top like this, that is not a leg. That is a 15 split, and I'm gonna show you how to build that 15 split. You got a 15 written over the top like that, that is not a leg. You don't build it the way I just built that. I'm gonna show you how this should be built versus the way that is built. You showing a leg down here doesn't make a difference. I don't care how long this is down here at the bottom of this 15, a 5, a 10, or whatever that basket might be. I don't care how long that is down there. If you see a 0 with a slash written next to it, that means that nothing goes below that. There has to be an actual number written here in order for it to be any type of stinger, whether it's a 5 or 10 or whatever. But I don't care how long it's down there. If it's a 0 written next to it, that means nothing goes below this. That is just a 15 basket. I'm gonna show you how to build that 15 basket, not basket, I'm gonna show you how to build that 15 split. This is your 15 split. We're gonna take some of the same steel that we're already working with. And while I'm doing this, never ever build a point with the steel already coiled. If the steel is coiled, I don't care how nice it looks, uncoil it. You don't know what's going on with that steel. You don't know if the steel is in a knot. You don't know whether the steel gonna come out properly when they uncoil it up top for wherever they're working with it at up top. So never build a point with the steel coil. Always uncoil the steel and recoil the steel as you build that point. What we're gonna do here, we are taking this one apart. As I said before, this is not a 15 leg, this is a 15 split basket. So what we're gonna do, and as I said, all your steel ain't gonna always cooperate with you. You'll get it, sometimes you're gonna get steel much nicer than this, but you're gonna have steel like this from time to time. But regardless of whether it cooperates with you or not, as long as it's the correct length of steel that's required to build this point, you have to use it. So you got your 10 leg, and you're gonna take your 5 leg, and like I said, me as a habit, I like to always stand downstage of the point when I'm building it. So when I stand downstage of it, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this, and I'm gonna take your 5 and your 10, and you take your 5 and your 10, and you put them together. You put the 5 and 10 together, and you make it to where you got the shackle with it facing me. The shackle be facing me, or facing you, and then you put the shackle in. When you put the shackle in, you have your 5 and your 10 together. The pin is facing downward from the 5 and the 10 is placed together. Now with your 5, what you're going to do, you're going to take another shackle, and with this shackle, you're going to place it in the end of your 5, but the shackle pin going to face away from you. You stick it in this way with the shackle opening, facing away from you, and place your pin in it. The reason for this is because when that uprigger gets this point up top, what's going to happen? They're going to throw this around whatever object that is up top that they have to secure this point. It's a lot easier to swing this 10 around without anything being attached to it to meet this and make your connection than it is to swing this 10 around with this shackle in it. Because if you swing this 10 around with this shackle in it, with the force coming around, it can hit that uprigger in his face when he does that. So it's much easier for him to take this 10, swing it around as he needs to, bring it over, and then attach it like so. But as you see, it's very crucial and very important that you put this shackle in the correct way. If this shackle is facing the other way, now this rigger working up in the air is, he got to take this shackle, if it will put it in here like this, he got to take this shackle out of here, he got to unsecure it, readjust it, put it back in the right way, and then make his connection. This can be very risky at times because what you're trying to do is make sure that uprigger take as least amount of steps as possible to secure that point up top. You don't want him dancing around too much with loose stuff in his hands, in his or her hands. Because when they dance around with a lot of loose stuff in his or her hands up there, the next thing you know, something done fall and then hurt somebody or kill somebody perhaps, depending on the height that it falls. Now, as you see in these 5 baskets, what we've been doing, we've been placing our burlap in the 5. But in this case, you're setting up a 15 split. So setting up a 15 split, you don't put the burlap in the 5 basket because you got the shackle in the 5 basket. So what you can put in the 5, you can where you're going to put your burlap? Your burlap is going to go in your 15 split 10. It's going to go in your 15 split 10. Where you will send this point up at, as far as where your motor chain going to fit, it hooks in here. This is where your hook is going to go. And that's how you send this point up. As far as how you would tie this point on, we're going to show you, after I get through building a few of these dead hangs here, what we're going to do after we get through building these dead hangs and these bridles, before it's said and done, we're going to show you how to send up a 15 split when we start sending up these dead hangs. Because the dead hang that we send up, we're going to send up a dead hang with a 15 split. That'll make it so simple for you to understand. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to move over and we're going to send you up a 510. The 510 that we sent up is basically just like any of these other points that we sent you up. But what we're going to do now is that I'm going to break some of this steel down. We use the same steel to build this other dead hang. So what we're going to do is build you a 5 basket with a 10 stanger. Okay. And we're just doing it this way because it makes it a lot quicker for us to do this. But as you know, when you start building these points, if you're in a venue someplace and you're building these points, each one of these points can have its own steel. So when you get to these points, you're going to have to uncoil your steel and build a point from there. But right now, what we're doing, we're saving time. After everything we've shown you thus far, you should know these points. You should know the rig points components and what have you. I'm just showing you how these different dead hangs differ from one another. So now what we have here is a 5 basket and a 10 stanger. So what we're going to do is put you Put your shackle in here, like so, your primary shackle, your main shackle. And once again, take your auxiliary shackle. It goes on the side. It has no thread. It goes inside. It has no thread. You pick up your 10. Secure it. You don't have to wrench it down. You don't have to get real tight. Just snug it. Make sure it's in place. And then check your auxiliary shackle, the one that your uprigger is going to be working with to secure this point. You want to check that to make sure he can work with it when it gets up top, because remember, he doesn't have any tools up there. So if you send this shackle up there and it's bonded and he can't open this shackle to secure the point, that means he's going to have to drop this point back in, and sometimes that can be as high as 150 feet. So just imagine he doesn't pull this point 150 feet. He got to drop it back in 150 feet. Then he got to pull it up again 150 feet. That's 450 feet, if my math is right. But nonetheless, that's a long, I'll put it like this. That's too many times to pull one point. Let's put it like that. Too many times to pull one point. Now, once again, as I said before, what you want to do is put your burlap in it. And of course, each and every time, you want to try to core your steel as neatly as you can. Once you build that point, and you want to make certain that you got about a foot, about 2 or 3 feet sticking out if that motor is not there, so you don't get any knots in this point when you send it up when the motor do get there. But if, like I said, if the motor there, go ahead and hook your sting into it to begin with. You want to coil it up, kind of make it look as neat as you can before laying it down, but always lay your steel either to the left or to the right of your point, if possible. If you can lay it upstage of the point or downstage of the point, anything, just don't lay it directly on top of the point, because why? Your ground riggers, when they come along and they grab that point and they're going to be tying that point in to send up to the uprigger, they need to know what's in that point. They need to know what's in that rig point. So if you're trying to drop this point on top of the point, that means they got to pull all this, especially if it's a big bridle, you got to pull all this steel apart and dragging it apart there to try to see what's written on the ground, what's written on the floor. So always do it to the left or the right, upstage of it, or downstage of it, so they can look at that point instantaneously, right away. They can look right at that point. They can see what is written on the floor. They can go ahead and check that point right quick. They know what's in that point. Most of the time, like as I said, all the steel that you work with, that's another reason why color coding the steel is very useful. Because when they color code the steel like that, if they say, okay, this should be a 15 leg, okay, if that's supposed to be a 15 leg, perhaps say if this is a bridle, if that's supposed to be a 15 leg, I can look and see white, a white thumble, and I can see a red thumble. I know that's 15. If I can look over here and this is supposed to be a 25 leg, I can look and I can see red, and I can see 20. I know that's 25. I don't have to uncoil that to see that, see? But if you got this thrown on top of the point, now I got to drag all this stuff off the point to see what's down there, then I can mess that rig point up as it is, trying to figure out what's there. But if it's laid left, right, up, or downward from the point to begin with, nice and neatly, I can already see what's there before I even touch it, because I can read what's on the point, read what's on the floor, before I even decide to send it up to the uprigger. That's a good trait to know and a good trait to have. We can move over here to this 15 basket, 10 stinger. 15 basket, 15 split, same thing. So we're gonna move over here. You go over here. What we're gonna do, of course, I know you probably already know how to do this, but I want to make double sure that you know how to do this. So every point that I move to, most of the time I'm going to tear that point completely apart and reassemble it, because I want to make certain that you know it. Because why? Because when you get through learning everything that's on this video, there should be no reason, if anyone is hiring during that time, there should be no reason why you don't qualify for that job if they're hiring anyone at that particular time as a ground rigger. So that's why I tear this stuff down and put it all back together, because I want to make certain that you understand how to build these rig points. Now what we're going to do, we're going to build your 15 split. Once again, 15 split is one of the most difficult. It's very simple, but you'll be surprised how difficult it is for some people to build. They either build it backwards sometime or they build it as a 15 leg. So that's why I focus a lot on the 15 split or the 15 basket for you. So what we're going to do here, what we're going to do, we're going to take your 5 basket, a 5 5-foot stinger, a 5-foot piece of steel rather, and we can take your 10-foot piece of steel, and we're going to bring those two eyes together like so. You bring those two eyes together just like this. And like as I said, I like to build it downstage. I like for my steel, I like to be downstage of my steel because it's a lot easier for me to make certain that my pins on my shackles going to be in the right place. So I'm going to do it like this. Take my steel, take my shackle apart, put my shackle like so, have my pin facing me. Now don't cinch it down, just make sure it's nice and snug. I'm going to go over here. We're going to take this shackle and we're going to put it in the 5 with the pin facing away from you. Have the pin facing away from you, meaning that the steel is going to be in the bell of the shackle. And then you're going to always make certain that you put your burlap in your 10 leg on a 15 split. You're going to always put your burlap in your 10 leg on a 15 split, and you're going to hook your chain motor hook here. And as I said before, when we start sending these points up, we're going to use a 15 split basket to show you how to send up a 15 split basket. Now, we're going to move over to an actual bridle. Okay, we've just got through building our very last rig point for you from a dead hang perspective. Now what we do, we're going to move over here and we're going to build this bridle for you. This is going to be an even bridle with a stinger. What you see I got laid out here on the floor, we laid it out to show you what components you need to build this even bridle rig point with a stinger. You got your 2 shackles up top, you got your 2 5-foot pieces of steel, you got 3, should be 3 10-foot pieces of steel here, which I am missing one. So I will reach over here and get this one over here, and we got 5 shackles. The reason why I pointed this out to you like that, because it's so imperative that you understand how many rig point pieces, how many rig pieces you need, equipment rather, to build that rig point. Because why? You don't have all this excess steel lying all over the floor once the point has been built. What we can do, we can start off with the stinger. If the motor is there, what you're going to do, you're going to hook this stinger right into the motor. But if the motor is not there, as we said earlier, you can try to coil this if the steel cooperate with you. You can try to coil it to where you can leave the stinger end of it sticking out about 2 or 3 feet. So when that motor do get there, you can hook right into it and don't have to worry about having any knots in the steel when the point goes up. Now what we're going to do, we're going to move right up. We're building this point from bottom up. The reason why you're building this point from bottom up, that way when you coil the steel up, the uprigger, when he starts pulling this point, he won't be pulling from the bottom of the rig point steel. So what we're doing, we're coiling this. That is one of your bridle legs, which is a 10-foot piece of steel. This is your other bridle leg, which is a 10-foot piece of steel, because this is an even bridle. And as you notice, the way it's coiled, we have it coiled where your loop is on top, so that uprigger, when he pulls it, is going to go right off the top. It's like a yo-yo. You got 1 shackle here. This 1 shackle that you have is all you need to attach both of these legs and this stinger. Shackle always pointing downward. It's pin on that shackle rather, always fit it pointing downward, so it keeps weight on that shackle, which in this case it has to be like that anyway, because you cannot, the bell of the shackle can only fit 2 pieces of steel at once, not the part that has the pin in it. Now we move over to one of your legs on your bridle, which either leg, it doesn't matter, because why? Because this is an even bridle. But now if this wasn't an even bridle, if it was not an even bridle, and if you had a dog bone or a deck chain in there, that's the leg you want to concentrate on first to make certain that you don't leave anything out. Once again, when you're placing your shackle in, place your shackle in, making sure the threaded side is the side that your auxiliary shackle goes on. Picking up the leg of your 10, put your shackle in. not cinching it down real hard. Just make sure it's good and snug. Check your other shackle, turn it all the way, snug it back up, not tight, making sure that the rigger up top can take it apart so he can secure the point when it gets up there. Make sure you put your burlap in it. Don't just put the burlap like that. Put the burlap all the way and try to make it so it goes at least halfway if you can, to make certain that it's secure. We're moving over to your other leg. Do the same thing. You're gonna put your shackle in, put it on the threaded side, put it on the threaded side, snug it up, check your shackle. Always check these shackles. Your upriggers do not have any tools up there. Always check these shackles to make sure he can take it apart to secure that point when it gets up. Everything is done on this even bridle. That is the way a bridle should be built, from bottom up. What we're gonna do now, we're gonna be moving over to a bridle with a dog bone. We just built an even bridle for you with a stinger. What we're gonna do now, we're gonna start building bridle with you. Some of them gonna have no stinger. Matter of fact, none of these bridles are gonna have stingers, but they will have deck chains and dog bones inserted. What we try to do to save a little time, a lot of our steel is not coil. As I stated earlier, when steel come in, a lot of times your tow riggers may bring in steel that files may not be coil, even some of your tins may not be coil, but for the most part, tow riggers will bring in this steel that's going to be coil. So don't take for granted that the steel I have here, ability points for you in this video, meaning that your steel will not be coil when it comes in. We're doing this solely for the purpose of sake of time. This bridle here that we have, as you see how it's written on the floor, you have one leg, you have a 10, so that means that 10 means that is a 10-foot piece of steel. This leg, it has a 12. That means there's a 10 plus 2. So that 10 plus 2, we're talking about a dog bone, which we have written down here on the floor on the side. That means that that 2 foot is that dog bone, which makes up that 12-foot leg. Both of these bridle legs are going to have a 5-foot basket. Now, this is very crucial about where you place this short steel in a bridle. Now, when you are placing your short steel on a dead hang, you always put your short steel at the end of that dead hang. So if you say like you've got 25-foot piece of steel here on a dead hang, you got a 20 and you got a 5. What you want to do, you want to put the 5 on the bottom, because your tool rigger might say, well, we need to burn 5 feet off of that because I can't get enough head height for my set that goes up. So I want to burn 5 feet off of that. So you don't want to drop 25 feet in just to take off the 5-foot piece of steel. Especially if these riggers are working in a venue that may be 90 to 100 to 150 feet high. So you want to have them to drop in as less as possible, because that's less height they got to pull it back up. So what you do, if that's a 25-foot stinger, what you want to do, you want to put that 5 on the bottom if it's a dead hang or a stinger. In this particular case, this is a short piece of steel in the leg of a bridle. So what you want to do, you want to take your 5-foot, meaning that this is a 12-foot leg and the other one is a 10-foot leg. What you want to do, like as I said, you want to always start building the side of that bridle that has the most components to it, like a dog bone or a deck chain or what have you. You want to build that leg first. Why? Because you want to make certain that you don't leave anything out that needs to be inserted into that bridle leg. So what we're going to do, we're going to try to take this bridle point. We're going to move this bridle point downstage of the bridle point that's on the floor. We take the shackle, take a 3/8 shackle, 5/8 shackle that is. Take a 5/8 shackle. What we're going to do is place it in the end of your 2-foot dog bone. This is a 2-foot dog bone. Your dog bone mostly be a 2-foot dog bone, or it can be a 1.5-foot dog bone. So you're going to place shackle in like so, with the pin facing you. The pin will be facing you, because when you put it into that bridle leg, the pin will be still facing you. When this point be sent up, there'll always be weight on that pin, so there's no chance of it to spin itself out. But when you attach that basket to this, this is how it's going to look when it goes up. That pin is always facing downward. Just where your pin should always face. You curl this up somewhat neatly if you can get the steel to cooperate with you. Now what you're going to do, you move to your next leg. And this way, in this sense here, being that you only had added components on one leg, now that you know you got that in the leg, this is an even leg. See this, there's no dog bone or deck chain on this side. So you should be able to just go ahead and just attach the basket to this side. So you coil it up somewhat neatly. Then what you want to do is put your apex together, pin facing down to you, which you won't have much of a choice because otherwise you're not going to be able to get the shackle in it. Facing down to you. This is where your hook going to go in from your motor chain. It'll hook in there. Then we'll go over here. As you see how we're building, we build this point from bottom to upward. From bottom to up. As you coil it, the steel will be coiled on top. When that point goes up, it goes up like a yo-yo, like a slinky, it goes off top. Now we're going to attach our basket. Put your basket on here. I'm only going to attach one basket. So since I'm going to attach one basket to it, I'm going to choose to attach it to this side. Again, for sake of time, saving a little time. You already know how to build a bridle. What I'm just doing is showing you how to attach it when you're using dog bones and deck chain. You know automatically on this side, since there's no dog bone or deck chain on this side, the basket that I'm about to attach to this dog bone, the only thing you would do, if I were going to attach this other basket, I just would attach it directly to the 10-foot leg. So over here, I'm going to go over here, put my shackle in, threaded side. Auxiliary shackle always go on the threaded side. You'll never go wrong. Attach it here. Snug it. Don't cinch it down. Just snug it. Come over here. Check that auxiliary shackle. Tighten it all the way up. Break it loose. Snug it back up a little. That way your uprigger will be able to break it when it gets up top to secure the point because he do not have any tools up there. Then what you do, put your burlap, try to make your burlap come at least halfway in it if you can, if it's possible. Now, you're not going to always be able to do that, but try to get the burlap as far as you can through the eye of that steel, because why? When the burlap drop, as that uprigger pulling the burlap up top, he's going to have to drop his rope back in later after making the point because he has to have burlap underneath that steel so the beam edges up top won't ruin the steel. So try to make certain that you can put that burlap in there secured enough where hopefully it won't come out. Sometime it will, but hopefully it will not come out as you pull it up. So that, we're going to consider this as being a complete build of this rig point because the only thing would have to be attached over here is just the basket on that. But like I said, I'm just saving time, so we're going to move on to the next point. What we're going to do, we're going to take some of these rigging components here to make up this other bridle over here we're going to make. The bridle we're going to make up here now is going to be a bridle that has a deck chain. Come over here, put our shackle down, over here, shackle down. What I'm going to do on these bridles, I'm going to be only making these bridles up with the basket only on the side that has deck chains and dog bones and things of that nature, because you already know how to attach a basket to the point. All I'm trying to do is show you how you attach these dog bones and deck chains to these bridles, because that dog bone and that deck chain, whether it's a dog bone or a deck chain, they both is being utilized the exact same. Whether it's a 10-foot piece of steel, 20-foot piece of steel, a dog bone 2-footer, or a piece of or a deck chain. It all is in line, and you are utilizing them all the exact same way, for the exception of the deck chain, because the deck chain is actually what you have to have in a rig point in order to make adjustments. That's the only thing that you can use in a rig point to make adjustments. A dog bone or any other piece of steel is not going to allow you to make any adjustments in a rig point unless you're taking out a piece of steel to make that adjustment. But if you want to just move that point 2 feet this way, 1 foot this way, or 3 feet that way, you must have a deck chain in order to make that happen, to make that possible. we're going to build this point here. This is an even bridle. This is a bridle with no stinger, but we got a 10-foot leg with 6 lengths, and we got a 10-foot leg with 2 5 baskets and no stinger. We're going to put that together for you right quick. Now, how we're going to do this, you're going to drag this over here. We're going to drag this point over here because we already got 2 10-foot legs. So we got 2 10-foot legs. If we were building this point from scratch, we're going to put this point down. We'll coil this steel up as neatly as we can. We'll coil this steel up as neatly as we can because we already got 2 10-foot legs here. Save us a little time here. We're going to take this dog bone off because this rig point does not require a dog bone. It only requires a deck chain. As I said before, always kind of build it below that point, or left or right of the point, or above the point, so the ground rigger won't have a difficult time reading what's on the floor before knowing whether this point got all the adequate components before sending it up to the uprigger. So what we're going to do here, since we have in this point, in this rig point here, we have a deck chain. We already got the 2 10 legs secured. As I said before, we're not going to put a basket on that side. You already know how to build a 5 basket. What we're going to do is only secure the basket on the leg that has the deck chain. This is what we're going to do. First of all, I'm going to show you why you need to count the lengths in these deck chains before you choose a deck chain to put into a rig point that you can send up to the uprigger. 9 times out of 10, a lot of times, when you're working on the floor, now this is very rare, but a lot of times, you just don't know for sure. So, if you really want to be a real good rigger, especially a ground rigger, you want to always count. You want to always inspect all your rigging components when you put a point together. Because why? When that point goes up in the air of that uprigger, he's 100, 150 feet above your head. He can only work with what he has up in the air. John, you can tie, he can drop a rope in, you can tie something else on and send something else up there to him if you really actually need it. But why make him work extra hard like that? It's your job as a ground rigger to make certain that everything is done correctly before you send it up to him. So you make very sure everything that you got is adequate and will be able to fulfill whatever your lead rigger or your tow rigger tells you that he wants to take, what he wants to take place in order to make sure that rig point hit where it needs to hit. Why I'm talking so much about this situation? This is why. Check this out. You got one deck chain here. And you got a deck chain here. And like I said, this only happens very rarely. It doesn't happen that often. But you'll get deck chains come in sometime. On average, you're going to get a deck chain that's going to be 10 length, 12 length, 14 length. That's kind of expected sometime because you have people who doing circus rigging and stuff like that. So they have sometimes a little extra longer deck chain. But on the average, when you talk about this doing rock and roll and corporate rigging, most of the time, 99% of the time, your average deck chain will be no more than 10 lengths. So if you got a rigger come along and he said, I need a full deck in this rig point, he might write down on the floor, full deck. He might write down FD. He might write down 10 lengths, or 10L or whatever the case may be. At any rate, he may write down a mark, write down a symbol to let you know that he wants you to put a full deck in. But this is why you need to count the lengths to make certain that what you're setting up to that uprigger is in fact a full 10 length deck chain. Check this out. This one, I want you to count it with me so you understand. You understand what I'm saying? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10 length. That's a 10 length deck chain. That is your normal deck chain with 10 length. There's other deck chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You got 9 lengths. So if you only got 9 lengths in a deck chain, in the industry on on average, that's not considered a full deck chain. I only keep this deck chain with me just to make my point, just to teach a class and also to make this video. I'm doing this so I want you to always count the links in the chain before you insert it into a rig point, because before it's all said and done, that tour rigger or that lead rigger might say, put me a full deck in there. Well, it's impossible to put a full deck in there if you only got 9 links. So that's why you need to always count the links in the chain before you send the chain up. Now, I'm going to take this deck chain and set it to the side to make certain that I use the right chain. So, set that link to the side. Now, to show you how to insert this deck chain. Some people, they come in, they take a deck chain like this, and I notice sometimes, and these are some of the supposed to be so-called experienced ground riggers. I see them come in, they put shackle in here. Some of them will put the shackle in this way. If you're not putting the shackle in the first link in the chain, I don't care what nobody tells you. If you're not putting the shackle in the first link in a deck chain, you're not putting it in the right place. You're not installing that deck chain in that bridle point correctly. Always put that shackle in the first link in that chain. Because why? You don't know how many links in this chain that you're going to have to use to adjust that point to make sure it hits the rig point on the floor. So if it's not in that first link, you just cause your uprigger a whole lot of problems. That means he's going to have to take this stuff apart. It's very risky. It's very dangerous for him, because now he's got to try to secure that eye on that steel that you sent this up in the wrong eye in the wrong length of the deck chain. So it's even made his life miserable up there for him, and he's that high in the air. So you as a ground rigger, you have a lot of responsibilities. So you have to pay attention to what you're doing. Everything depends on you, the ground rigger, to make sure everything goes well for the uprigger. His job is risky enough as it is. He's up that high in the air, he or she is up that high in the air. They're tied on, they're sitting on this little beam only about 8 to 12 inches wide. They don't need any more problems to make their life any more difficult. So the least you can do is pay attention to what your job is on the floor to make certain that you make sure that everything is correct before sending it up to your uprigger. Now what we're going to do, we're going to install this deck chain into this rig point, into this bridle. First link, like I said, first link goes right into the leg on this steel, because we don't have a dog bone. It goes right in the leg. It works just like just like I installed a 2-foot dog. Now I'm installing the deck chain. It works the same exact way. The only difference of it is it's going to tell me how many links that I need to have working before I attach the basket to it. Now that basket can be a 15 split basket. It can be a 10 basket. It can be a 5 basket. In this particular case, it's a 5 basket. So what you're going to do, it says 6 links on the floor. That's what that means. This is the deck chain, and you need 6 working links. When they say 6 working links, the definition of 6 working links, what that means is that it's 6 links that's going to be holding the weight along with the rig point itself. So that's what we call 6 working links. What we can do, we can lay this down. We can lay it down like so. And what we're going to do, we're going to count 6 links off. This is the easiest way to install this to make sure you got it done properly. We're going to count 6 links off. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you get to that 6th link, you pick it up, break it over like that. That is your 6th link is showing right there. You got your 6th link. Pick up your shackle, like so. You pick up your 5-foot piece of steel, 10-foot, split 15, or whatever it is. You insert your shackle, the threaded side. That's where this auxiliary shackle gonna go. Threaded side. Put it on like so. That is your 6th link showing, because it got 6 link on the floor. We already counted it off. We know this is your 6th link. Pick that up, insert it, and once you have done that, even though you know that was your 6th link, you want to double sure. Always count, always double check your work. You're going to pick it up again. You know it's 6 links on the floor. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know you got your 6 links. Now, this point is not completely done. You know why the point is not completely done? Because no rig point is completely done not until you insert your burlap. You pick your burlap up, you put your burlap in the point, and try to put it in there where you know it's not going to come out. That's what's considered a complete built of a rig point. That's completely done. The only thing we would have to do to this point to make sure this point is completely done is install the other bridle, to install the other 5 basket over there. But we're not going to do that because we just installed a 5 basket, which would be the same identical basket we placed on that side. Only different over there is we just got a deck chain on this side. You already know how to do a 5 basket. So I'm going to save you some time, and I'm going to save me some time, and I'm trying not to make this video too long, but I want to make certain that you clearly understand your job as a ground rigger and make certain that you have enough information to whenever you do go someplace to apply for a job as a ground rigger, you can impress them by letting them know that you do know what you're talking about. As long as you know what you're talking about and you can build these points, anybody will be more than happy to teach you the rest. You can learn the rest on the job. But coming in the door, you got to have enough to get someone's attention to give you an opportunity to do what I'm showing you here now. We're going to move along. This time, over here, we got a dog bone and we got a deck chain. We got a dog bone on one leg. We got a deck chain on the other leg. But this is the difference. Even though we don't have a stinger on it, there's no stinger on it. And whenever you got a point like this, when I say no stinger, that means there's nothing hanging below this V. More people call this a V, but the proper terminology for this in the rig world, that's an apex. So whenever your steel meets together like this, like a V, forms a V at the bottom like that, that is considered an apex. So if you don't have no piece of steel hanging below that apex, then that means that there's no stinger. So you have no stinger on the bottom. This time around, we're working with 20-foot legs. So the 20-foot legs you got one 20-foot leg that have a 2-foot dog bone. You got another 20-foot leg that has a 6 lengths. In this particular situation, I'm going to install both of the 5 baskets because they got 5 baskets. I'm going to install both 5 baskets on this one because why? Because you're not going to be attaching directly to the leg itself. You're going to be attaching it to other components like dog bones and deck chain. And in this particular rig point, you got a dog bone and a deck chain, and they're both on separate legs. We're going to start off with the 20-foot legs. Always uncoil your steel completely and then recoil it. You're going to start off doing that like so. Start off with this. Always, what I like to do, I like to press the steel against me. Because why? This steel will bounce back sometimes. It'll hit you on your leg, it'll hit you on your shin, hit you on your kneecap, and it can really hurt. It can sometimes jump up and bounce and hit you in your face. It can knock your teeth, it can knock your teeth out if you're not careful. So I always try to be careful. I put it against my body like so, and then I start uncoiling it. And some of the stuff can be a mess sometimes, depends on who worked with the product coming to your venue. So that's all the more reason why you need to be careful, because you don't know how this steel will coil. But either way, you want to make certain that you completely uncoil your steel before you start building the point, because you want to make certain that your steel don't have no knots in it. You want to make sure none of your steel have knots in it. Since this is long steel, what I like to do, me personally, and that's the reason why I'm teaching you this video, because I'm trying to show you some unique ways on how I try to do it. And once you learn how to do it on your own, you can do however you want to do it. But I'm just saying the way I'm doing it, I'm hoping to save you some time and hoping to help you understand how important it is, the business that we're in, that you try to be very safe in what you do, because you can hurt somebody. This stuff will kill you. What I'm going to do, I'm going to call this 20-foot right below the point itself. And sometimes you will get steel. Sometimes you might get some nice steel. You might be able to get some. Unfortunately, some of the steel you get is not all that cooperative with you. Unfortunately, that's the way the steel going to go. That's the way I'm going to have to let it go. That's what I'm going to have to lay it. I lay that. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to uncoil my steel and recoil it as neatly as possible so I can get to securing that apex. Once I got that apex together, then I can go ahead and start building my point from bottom up. So what we're going to do here, we're going to grab my other 20 leg, pressing it against my body, trying to avoid any steel bouncing back and causing harm to myself. or to anybody else around me for that matter, because it can bounce away from you. A lot of times you can have a lot of stage hands working around you, or it might even be another rigger for that matter. You want to be very careful. You don't want that steel to jump out of your hand and hurt someone. So always be very cautious when you uncoiling steel, especially long steel. Especially long steel. The long steel have a tendency to bounce a lot further. So now that I got that uncoiled, first thing I'm going to do is secure my apex first. I'm going to go ahead and put that in place. And the reason why I want to secure that apex first, I want to make certain you don't get kicked underneath. The rest of the steel is coiled on the floor, because you'll be working around other riggers sometime. I want to make sure they get kicked underneath, and then I don't see it and don't realize it, and there's a knot in it, and when they pull it up, it ruins my steel, which I'm going to show you what I'm talking about once I coil this other leg here. I coil this other leg. As you can see, this is not the greatest steel, but what can you expect when you ask for someone to donate you something to make this video? At any rate, you got that. You got your two 20 legs coiled as neatly as I can below the rig point. So if somebody comes over here, they'll be able to look at that rig point. They'll be able to look at the steel that the rig point was built out of. They'll be able to identify the color codes in the rig point on the steel, and they'll be able to tell me right away whether everything that's supposed to be in that rig leg, in that rig point, is in that rig point, which we haven't gotten there yet, but that's the purpose for me building it below. But the reason why I stop at this point, I want to show you what happens when you don't uncoil steel and recoil it. This is a 20-foot piece of steel right here. This is a 20-foot piece of steel that someone did that very thing that I was telling you about. They built the point. They didn't make certain that the end of the steel, the end of that stinger, leg, or whatever it was out far enough to where the motor came, they could hook into it without the steel being in a knot, or they didn't uncoil it and rebuilt the legs on a bridle to make certain that no knots was in it. This is what happened. Now, to the average person, they think, oh, it's just a knot, and why don't you just push it apart? It's not as easy as you may think it is. Once you get enough weight on steel, you got enough weight on steel, and you'll still have a knot in it, and it goes up like that to the upper rigger, and he pulls it up like that, or especially if you're going to put some weight on it from a chain motor being hooked to it, it's impossible to take this knot out without damaging the steel. It's already damaged anyway because it has the knot in it. But when you take that knot out, the steel isn't any good anyway. So it doesn't make any difference whether you take the knot out or leave the knot in it. This steel is no longer useful for anything other than showing what not to do, like showing you in this video demonstration. So that's the only reason why I took the steel apart, just to show you this is what happens when you don't leave yourself enough stinger on the end if a motor is not there to hook into. Always give yourself 2 or 3 feet out if you're building a point if the motor is not there. So when the motor do arrive, you can hook into it without it being caught up and be made end up with this type of result. Now what we're going to do, we're going to move on and put your baskets and your dowel bone and your deck chain in this rig point. And the reason why I stopped to show you that on one hand, on the other hand, it doesn't make a difference which leg you start on this in this situation, because why? Both of these legs requires additional steel or deck chain in that rig point. One leg needs a dog bone, the other leg needs a deck chain. So it don't make a difference which leg you start on. So in that case, we're going to come over here. He's going to take this leg over here with the dog bone. We're going to start on that one first. And always remember again, if you're building a point, and if that's not an even leg, if it's not an even bridle, on the average, you always count the pieces that you need to build that rig point. For an example, if you're building an even bridle, you can have, you always know, if you're building an even bridle, you always need 2 shackles for a basket. So that's going to be 2 shackles and 2 shackles. That's 4 shackles already. This is an even bridle. That's what I'm saying as an example. We're going to pretend this is an even bridle. So if this is an even bridle, you need 2 shackles here, 2 shackles here, and 1 shackle here. Whether you have a stinger or don't have a stinger, you still need 1 shackle here to attach that, to make that apex out of the legs off your bridle legs. Or if you have a stinger, it doesn't make a difference. You still need 1 shackle here. So you need 2 shackles here because you need to attach to the legs of this bridle. So that's 2 shackles, 4 shackles, 1 shackle, 5 shackles. When it comes to adding additional stuff to a leg, whether it's a deck chain or a dog bone, you automatically add an extra shackle. Why? Because you have to have something to attach it to the basket. You got to have something to attach it to the basket. You have to have something to attach it to the basket or the leg or what have you. So whenever you're adding a dog bone, add a shackle. Whenever you're adding a deck chain, add a shackle. Whenever you're adding a deck chain and a dog bone, add 2 shackles if they're on the same leg. If they're on separate legs, like in this case, then you add 1 shackle each for each leg. So this way, we're going to put this shackle right here. And if you notice, I've already made the apex, meaning that in the apex is not where I had placed the dog bone, because the apex is already made. You got 2 pieces, you got 2 ends of each 20. You got one end of each 20 rather, that makes up your apex. Now I put the short steel up top. The reason why I put your short steel up top, simply because if you got to take out that dog bone, or that deck chain for that matter, if you have to take out that dog bone or that deck chain so that point will hit where it needs to for that rigger, for that tour rigger to make certain that it works for his show, these are 20-foot legs. You don't want to have that short steel in the apex. Because the short steel in the apex, that means that they got to, one of these riggers is going to have to drop his point almost all the way in for the other rigger to pull his up on the other side to take it out of the apex, which is crazy. Doesn't make any sense. Always put, to make a long story short, always put your short steel, and of course automatically put your deck chain, because that's the only way you can adjust a point, but always put your short steel at the top of the steel for your rig points in a bridle. That way, it's a 2-foot dog bone. So it's a 2-foot dog bone, and the dog bone has to come out. The rigger on the opposite side, he doesn't make his point. He just let his point in a little bit, so this rigger can pull up his side, take out the dog bone, make his side, and reverse it so the rigger can make his on the other side. And vice versa. In a point like this, he may say, take out the deck chain. Okay, if the guy on the other side needs to drop his deck chain, the guy with the dog bone don't make his side, he just let his side hang. The guy takes out his deck chain, makes his point, flip it back up, then you make your point. So now I'm going to do here, like as I said, since these had extra pieces in it, I'm going to make the complete baskets on these. Always threaded side. Place your shackle. On the threaded side, put your shackle in. Don't cinch it down, just snug it tight. Check your shackle. Always remember, and then snug it back up, but always remember, most riggers do not have any tools. They do not have any tools. So don't make them work so hard trying to break that shackle when it gets up there to them to secure that point. Always check those shackles and make certain that they can take those shackles apart to secure that point when it gets up there to them. Now we can do this. We can take our burlap, we throw our burlap over here. We can get our other burlap, we throw that over here. And you know what, even though this is a 9-deck chain, this is a 9-link chain, we're just going to use this 9-link chain just to make my point. That's all we're doing it for. We know this is not a full deck, that's a 10-link deck chain there. But we're just going to use this 9-link chain just to show you where to place your chain. As simple as that. You take this, since it's 6 links in here, you're going to take this. Always, no exceptions. No exception. No way around it. Always put this shackle in your very first link when you're installing a deck chain in a bridle rig point. Always. First link, not second, not third, always the very first link. Put it in there, secure your deck chain. Once you secure your deck chain, and before I go any further, let me also say, You know, some of these deck chain comes in, they got your weight tag on them. These tags are telling the weight capacity of these deck chain. But now, I've been in the business for a while, and I haven't seen many of these popped off when you send these points up. But you try to avoid these tags being caught in these baskets, in these shackles as much as possible, because these things fall off and they're up like 100 feet, 80 feet, even 50 feet in the air. These things can fall out and cut somebody in the face. It can really hurt you. So I recommend when you build these reg points, always put your tag up top. Make certain that your tag is nowhere down here. Now sometimes you need to do a full deck. Unfortunately, there's no way of avoiding it. But at any rate, if it's any way possible, always build your rig points. If you're going to install a deck chain, always do it with your tag facing upward, where it won't be in the way of the basket being pulled below. Now, and after you done count your 6 lengths off, making certain that you got your 6 lengths broke down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or whatever amount of lengths it is that's written on the floor. In this particular case, we have 6 lengths that need to be inserted here. That's going to be your working length. So you're going to go ahead and install your basket. Pick this up like so. Install your basket. And once you install your basket on here, like I always said, once you install your basket, then what you want to do, you want to pick it up and recount your lengths. Because why? You're sending this up to your uprigger. He may be 150 feet up in the air. You want to make double sure that you didn't make a mistake. It called for 6 lengths on the floor. I know you just inserted your basket. You want to recount it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you're good to go. Everything is fine. We're not going to insert no burlaps in the end of it because we know that the point is not done until you insert the burlaps in it. So we're good to go. This point is completely done. What we're going to do now, we're going to move over. We're going to go outside. And it's only about 6 feet, maybe 7 feet up in the air. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you. We have a little small rope. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you how to secure a split 15 basket and how to secure a 5 basket. I'm not going to have a stinger or anything on them. I'm just going to show you how to secure them. And I'm going to roll a motor out there. I'm going to roll a little half-ton motor out there and just hook the deck chain, just hook the chain motor to it so you'll see where your hook need to be inserted when you're setting up a 5 basket or 15 split, because those are the most difficult baskets to send up because they don't have a stinger on them. If they don't have a stinger on them, sometimes it's kind of confusing where you need to hook that hook. So that's why I'm going to do it with a split 15, and I'm going to do it with a 5 basket so you'll know which side that auxiliary shackle should be on when you hook that hook into that working shackle. We'll move outside and take care of that for you right now.